to our like student nonpartisan voting group, and I started as a member there, and then my sophomore year took over as a co-leader of that group, and ever since have been working in that sphere. I started as a campus election engagement project fellow my sophomore year, and then I've been a CVP fellow, democracy fellow for 2 years. I don't think like you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a little bit of a history in this industry. Previous to coming to Columbus State, I spent about 10 years in government affairs, government relations before changing gears completely and becoming an engineer. I have a little bit of experience on political campaigns, a little bit of a background in canvassing, as Hannah mentioned as well. Trying to find ways to keep this muscle active, if you will, as I move into a different career path.
Awesome. Great. Hey, you're next.
Yeah, I kind of stumbled into it, is how I like to say it. I worked at the polls in 2018 for the midterms, my senior year of high school in AP Gov, and was kind of like, voting's cool. Like, this is interesting. I like talking to people about this and kind of helping facilitate that process. And then I got to Denison. I guess offhandedly mentioned to a staff member that I was kind of interested in voting, and they got me connected to Do You Votes, and it's kind of just been a snowball since then. So yeah, I mean, I definitely never like really saw this as where my college path would go, but here I am now, I guess.
All right, my next question for you all is, what are some of the best ways for college students to become more politically engaged?
So I'll jump in on this one. I think considering the outcomes is fundamental for any college student, especially as you're contemplating what career you're going to go into. Look into how your decisions are going to be affecting your career going forward. Elections, voting impacts this critically. So that's my one piece of advice.
Look into the student groups that are on your campus, connect with resources like CVP and All Voting is Local Ohio. And obviously poll working is a big aspect to find out ways you can volunteer and stuff like that. We have an Ohio Coalition of Student Voters that started out last year. We have monthly meetings. They're virtual, just to connect with campuses across the state, hear issues that we're all having, so we can kind of coordinate on issues. Those invites will be going out. Since you registered for this event, you should be getting those once we come up with the date for those. But there's organizations out there that are available for you. So making sure you're reaching out to us or Alexis, and we can connect you with different opportunities.
Hey, do you have anything to add for that question?
Yeah, real quickly, I think just like finding opportunities to like be able to engage in dialogue with people like across differences, ideally, and just like about the context and the political environment. I think that's kind of like the necessary first step if we're creating engaged and empowered voters. So, I mean, we're trying to do as much of that as possible at Denison, trying to get better at it, but just finding ways to kind of have conversations that will expand your worldview and expand your kind of understanding of what a civic community means, both in the country, on your campus, in your state, but anywhere really.
My next question for you all of you have engaged in fellowships with voting rights organizations, and what have you learned during those fellowships? Did things that you learned help you grow professionally, and if so, how?
Yeah, all of my fellowships, like my greatest takeaway from them has been the network I've made. So all of the fellowships connect you with a larger state network and a nationwide network. So it's been very beneficial to like sit in calls and take ideas away from states across the nation and other people who are working with similar issues that you might not have expected. Every single call I get on for a fellowship, I take something away in the end. So it's been very beneficial. And then CVP specifically has had like political professional panels that have like connected us to people working in different jobs in the political world. So that there has been definitely a professional takeaway for me.
Absolutely. I think it's given a good, strong foundation about how to communicate about the subject matter, contributing to these groups, engaging in these fellowships, articulate your thoughts a lot more clearly than just simply walking into a block.
I'm just dittoing what they said. I would have said the exact same thing.
Great, and that's a valid response. All right, my next question is, how do we convince young people that their votes matter? Okay, you want to take that one first?
Yeah, I think one thing we've seen on Denison's campus, and one thing that makes the campus, I mean, other people who come from private colleges know this, is like only 20% of our students are from Ohio. So focusing on like Ohio issues and Ohio kind of based ideas is harder. But I think just really prioritizing people to think locally about their political landscape and about their vote. There's some crazy stat out there that like something over 100 elections in Ohio, like I'm dropping a stat without really knowing what it is, but there's been like over 100 elections decided by like, you know, one vote in Ohio. And I think that's the same with any state, wherever someone's coming from. So getting students to think about those local ideas, those local candidates, those local issues, that'll get them kind of more connected to the community, I think is how you can really empower someone to be a lifelong voter and a lifelong member of their civic community, instead of just someone who's riding the political wave or just really caught up in the energy of a specific movement or moment.
I'll dovetail in with that as well. I mean, elections won by one vote, obviously they're exclusive, but elections won by 50, a couple hundred votes. When you're engaging a community like a college campus, that can truly make a difference. Displaying that outcome is fundamental to the electoral process.
Yeah, I think the local voting is a super good point. That's obviously where people see the most direct impact, but with, I think it's also important to engage with like nationwide issues that, I mean, obviously student loan debt is a big one, but taking big talking point issues like that have a direct like impact for students immediately, basically, using issues like that. And then like obviously we saw a surge in college votes from the 2016 to 2020 presidential election, so building on that excitement will be big too.
Good points all around. My next question for you all is, how can we create more accessible materials geared towards young people that educate them on candidates and help them make informed decisions?
So online marketing seems to be really fundamental with this. I'm a strong advocate for kind of reducing that carbon footprint. A lot of print literature isn't really as current as it would be. So yeah, emphasizing on those online strategies, online engagements, having somebody on the opposite end of the chat queue, should be fundamental with engaging with individuals.
And keeping in mind that like the length of materials is important when they're being sent out to a body of college students, because we're all busy. And I know that long emails or long resources that are several pages aren't always received to the best of the ability, even if the information is important. So making sure that the length as well as like the distribution method is kept in mind. For my campus specifically, like it's always easiest for me to distribute information through channels that students are already connected with. So rather than like sending out a campus-wide email that a lot of students just like realizes in their inbox and maybe won't pay as much attention to, connecting with individual student orgs that already have a base of students that support the work they're doing to distribute information for us has been a really beneficial way for us to get information across.
Yeah, I would just like to really emphasize that point. I think we've seen the same thing at Denison, like focusing on a campus-wide approach isn't always the most effective, especially when you're trying to communicate information like that students just aren't going to jump on, or it's not as easy to consume, like information about a candidate or an issue. Is just focusing on those community groups, find those cohorts on your campus where there already is that buy-in to that community and like channel it through there. And also make it fun. When we do like candidate education and issue education at Denison, we try to like couch it in with trivia, couch it in with like some sort of game, do it out on the A quad or our academic quads. There's like a lot of people around. Just make it fun, make it enjoyable, make it less like a, classroom style learning experience.
So you mentioned social media, Kyle. Is there one form of social media that is better for voting efforts than others?
So I don't want to regurgitate too much of what was said in the last panel, but definitely TikTok and Instagram are the two fundamental ones with the younger demographics, especially those around a college campus. So yeah, I would say that's my contribution to that.
Any different opinions?
We're trying to merge into the TikTok space, so if anyone has advice on how to best do that, I'll take it. But Instagram's great, especially stories are awesome.
Yeah, I was gonna say stories too, because that's just such an easy way for information to be shared. So like we have a Raise Your Voice Instagram account that we just constantly are posting stories. It's not that you always have to be coming up with the content yourself, because I know that can be hard to if you're a smaller organization that doesn't necessarily have the time, but at least utilizing your following and your space. If you have a social media account that you're using for your organization to share information that's already being put out there by other organizations like the Campus Notes Project and All Voting is Local, or other college campuses within your state are probably sharing resources that can be shared on your accounts as well.
And I'll just pitch into this one. I know I'm not a student, I know I'm not a campus, but as the communications director for Campus Vote Project, I will say that you all do not underestimate your own influencer power. I know it's like enticing and it's great to make the accounts separately for your voting organizations, but utilize your personal accounts because the people who are following you there are probably the ones who might not follow the voting specific account, right? So you want to get those people who wouldn't be getting that information and the information that way. And it doesn't have to be like a graphic, it doesn't have to be like, it can be simple as like, oh, I just filled out my voter registration, or I'm heading out to vote early, like, what's your plan, blah, blah. Just simple things like that, even just to remind your peers that like, there's an election happening and there are things that they need to do too. So definitely use that power that you have, like the following that you have on your personal accounts as well.
And it's different for every campus, obviously, but like for Otterbein at least, I know that there's a few campus organizations that will repost my accounts if I tag them.
Yeah.
Like, so sending it to your university accounts that aren't necessarily directly affiliated with the work you're doing, but are still affiliated with your university, and then can distribute information that way can also be helpful.
Yeah, definitely tag away, and you never know who's gonna reshare, unlike supposed to their stories. Absolutely. All right, well, speaking of like, sharing information, what information do I need to know to ensure that I make a good decision with my vote?
I think I saw everyone just like glance up at me. So I think, for me, what I always tell students is start small and get bigger. So you're going to look at your ballot and you're going to you're going to see, in Ohio, you're going to see the JD Vance, Tim Ryan race. You're going to see those kind of big ticket races. But then you're going to see a bajillion other things that are probably going to be really confusing to like the average student voter. And so I always tell students, start small, learn about your local area, learn about what issues are going on, because they probably will have a bigger effect on your daily life than, the statewide race or the federal race. But yeah, I mean, learn about the candidates first and foremost. And, I always direct students towards like nonpartisan resources, like the League of Women Voters and stuff like that puts out a lot of really great candidate profiles where they have them ask issue specific questions, and it's really well done. But yeah, I tell them start small and get bigger, because students will likely know the bigger stuff just from being on social media or just kind of being tapped into the national climate.
My first step is always looking at my sample ballot from the Secretary of State website, and then from there, like looking at candidate platforms to see mission and values, and then if there's any like smaller local position that you don't really know what their actual day-to-day job is or what they're doing in their role, like making sure that you understand that as well. So you're making an informed decision that the candidate you're choosing is fit for the role they're running for.
Yeah, I think mission and values, as you mentioned, is fundamental, and how it relates to you as an individual, how it relates to plans that you have for your future. This is fundamental.
What are some common barriers that to universities voting? And also, what are some potential solutions to those barriers?
One that Otterbein has it's proven to be a pretty difficult problem to solve is that our campus is split down the middle in terms of precincts. So we have half of our dorm halls in one voting precinct and the other in another half, even though they could literally see across the street the other dorm hall, and they're voting in different locations on a different ballot. So that's been a difficult problem to fix for us personally. We've brought the issue to our university senate, got support and backing from them. We had connections at our local board of elections prior to COVID. COVID kind of threw a wrench in our conversations there, but working on getting back in contact with the previous contacts we had to fix that issue. And then just like the solutions we've come up with in the meantime were like distributing, because students have to register at their dorm address rather than their universal campus mailing address, because we have one address that all students use with just a mailbox number and they can't register there. So we've had problems where students will try and register at that address and then the registration gets kicked back because they needed to register at their dorm hall address. So we have flyers that we distribute pretty regularly with all of the dorm hall addresses, and we talk about that frequently on campus so students are aware. But then in the meantime, we started an election day shuttle where we're driving students to campus because neither of our polling locations are within walking distance. So we've been working on bringing polling locations to campus. And we did have our first polling location on campus, but it's just not for either of our precincts. So it's, yeah.
So as a commuter campus, we're not residency here in Columbus State. A lot of our focus has been around just simply getting individuals registered. We cover so many different precincts, we cover so many different areas. Every student comes from a different part of Central Ohio, essentially. So we have a strong focus on either getting you registered or making sure your registration is current, and then moving forward so you know where the right information is going forward from there.
Yeah, our biggest barrier, building on all of the things that have already been said, but we have with being a campus where anywhere between 70 to 80% of our students are going to be out of state. And even if you go to like a state school like OSU or OU, like you're still going to have a lot of out of state students. Ohio, you can't use your student ID if you choose to register at your campus address as a proof of residency at the polling place. And that's a big problem for us, especially since, we might have 20% of our eligible voters are going to be voting. They're out of state residents, but voting in Ohio. And the problem we run into there is they then don't really have any form of ID. They can use their social security to register, but then they're kind of out of luck. And so we've kind of worked with the university to print like zero balance utility bills that they can bring to the polling place and show them and provide those to every student just kind of automatically. But that's definitely a big barrier. So figuring out kind of making sure that every student you're registering, especially if you're registering them not via absentee, like they're expecting to vote in person, that they actually understand if they're not an Ohio resident, that they're going to need some sort of ID at the poll to prove their residence, and their student ID card won't work, and their Pennsylvania state ID won't work. So it's definitely something we've had to confront.
That's something AutoRent does too. So if that's a problem you're having on your campus, that's something they can address. They can send zero balance utility bills. My freshman year, that was slid under every residence before. They haven't done that since COVID, and it makes more sense to have people request it anyways. They're not just printing all of that, but that's definitely an option.
No. All right, and my last question for you all is, how do I get involved with voting advocacy on campus and within the community?
Access your network around you, express that you have an interest, talk to your professors, talk to your peers, find a way to get involved.
Same. Connecting with CBP, like if you're interested on your campus, there might be a CBP fellow there that you don't know about. There's a lot of us around the state, so just making sure that you're reaching out with your interests and your resources you need will be given to you.
Yeah, pretty much ditto. I know Dennis and me run it out of kind of like the service involvement off campus office. So maybe find something similar to that. Some campuses have a civic engagement office, which is awesome. So find that. But there's also, besides CVP, like you might have a civic influencers fellow, someone related to Campus Compact, like through Newman or something. So usually if you dig around on some websites, you might find someone repping your campus that you didn't even know about.
We have a few extra minutes, and so I wanted to give our audience a chance to ask any questions if you all have any, or our panelists.
How do you suggest students who are going to college out of state from their hometown stay engaged in their home state or hometown's politics?
So I would say definitely make your best effort to stay informed. Consider changing your registration to where you're living currently. So whether that's your college dormitory, whether that's your apartment you're renting on campus, become involved in your local issues here in Ohio.
And moving on.
Yeah, I kind of say something similar when students ask, I always, they ask me, where should I register to vote? Or like, how do I stay connected if I'm, want to register to vote? And I keep using Pennsylvania. I say, like, where do you feel the most connected? And there's a good chance that maybe you do feel the most connected at your home state, but there's plenty of ways to stay involved, like email lists. I'm sure there might be, voting coalitions for wherever you're from locally. So check that out and see if there's ways you can kind of keep getting that information. There's a League of Women Voters chapter in pretty much every county. So that's always a great thing to check out as well if you're trying to stay connected.
One note, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that, like, I've noticed students who have stayed registered at home for their first or second year of college and then like became involved on campus and passionate about more local issues on their campuses and then decided to change their registration. So like, definitely, I would say, as to everyone else, like where you feel most connected, the issues you feel most passionate about. Stay informed with both. Obviously, that's great, but you definitely have a choice there, so.
My last note was the side effect of COVID being everything is now more virtual. A lot of this work is being done more virtually, so if someone is really, really inclined to, you know, stay connected and do some work within their home state where they're not physically at, they may find options to do that virtually, right? They may have options that they join meetings or like participate in coalitions, at least to some degree, by just attending virtual meetings, because a lot of these organizations are national. We do have presence in multiple states. So, you know, definitely research and check out the options, because you never know. There may be ways for you to still at least be in touch or have some level of involvement, even in, you know, a state that you're not living in currently. Any other questions from our audience? Anything that our panelists would like to add that we didn't get to cover today with our questions? Parting words of wisdom.
I would say, I'll throw something in. We pretty much advertise all deadlines as like 2 to 3 weeks earlier than the actual deadlines. Because I think, like, I read somewhere the #1 reason college students don't vote, like, statistically, is because they just miss the deadline. And I've definitely seen that just colloquially doing this work. So definitely, like, you know, push deadlines as earlier than they possibly or actually are. It's kind of like a little strategy we use.
Well, if there's nothing else today, that's our panel from our student panelists. And everybody, please give them a big round of applause. And I think we have just a little bit of a break coming up, and then we will be getting back together in the other room. All right, at 2:15. Thank you.